Welcome to The Breadwinners, the podcast about the never-ending hustle and its impact on all aspects of our lives. We're interested in what it takes to keep everything going. This podcast is about women, working, money, and family. We consider the research, talk to experts, and share our takes on what we're learning every day about breadwinning. I'm Deborah Owens. I write about working, wellness, and women, and founded the Working Mother Research Institute. And most days I'm joined by my co-host, Raquel Ellison. Today, we're back for a special series, talking to guests about the challenges facing the sandwich generation, meaning those of us juggling kids, parents, and careers all at the same time. Our guest today knows this too. Deborah Owens, thank you so much for sharing your sandwich expertise with us today.
Well, it's really a pleasure to be here.
Oh, we are going to get into it. So you are an author and a wealth coach, and you started your career in the financial and investment world. And so I thought we could start right there. Like, what brought you to it? What did you find once you were there? And then what did you do with that knowledge?
Oh, that's great. The truth is that the way that I entered the financial services industry was really a fluke.
Really?
I had a friend so let me start with my mom. So my mother would always be upset with me because prior to going in the financial services industry, I was in retail management. And so often every Christmas, every major holiday, I was working. And so one day my mother flippantly said, why don't you get a 9-to-5 job so you can spend some time with the family?
Wow.
And I thought about it and I said, you know what? She's right. And so I just happened to my sister had a friend and she knew someone that worked for Merrill Lynch. And she says, hey, I know this guy. You should just go and interview with him. And so I did. And at the time, the only job they had was as the receptionist. And I tell you, when I went in those, wood grained, marble floors,
yes.
right outside of, I'm from Detroit, so this was in Dearborn, Michigan, Ford country.
Mm-hmm.
I was just fascinated and I took it. And after about 6 weeks, the branch manager came out and said, it's clear you're overqualified for this job. Do you want to get your broker's license? And I did, but at the time, so I got a promotion to sales assistant. And so I had 3 brokers that I was responsible for. Back then, I'm dating myself, but we wrote in a ledger what the trades of the day, the stock trades. And,
Really?
and so I studied,
Yep.
I studied and I passed my exam. And then after about a year, really apprenticing with who was probably the only African-American female account executive at the time, went on to a smaller firm as a broker and then was recruited by Fidelity Investments, where I spent most of my career.
Ah, okay. And so how was that career?
Oh, you know what? I had a great, I didn't realize at the time what a phenomenal company Fidelity was. Now you look at it's probably the largest global financial services institution today, managing more assets. I'm sure they're top 1 or 2, but they were fabulous because at the time I started, it was a startup. They had just bought a discount brokerage firm and we were just, people were throwing money in the door, the Magellan Fund. And I went from cold calling to walking in the door and there being $50,000 checks to put in the Magellan Fund. So anyway, I then went into management and became a branch manager, vice president of the retail investor centers you see now, and then managed the West Coast. And so it was a fabulous, fabulous career. And even during my career with Fidelity, I had a love for demystifying the financial world. Certainly, from my perspective, no one in my family had ever invested in stock. And so, I can remember wondering why don't I know about the investment world? And so I wanted to tell everybody. It was sort of like, religion where you get
Right.
saved and you want everybody to
Yes.
be saved too.
Look what
And
I found out, people. Yes.
yes, yes. And so that's really what took me on my path. I had just started having children and I wanted some flexibility. My husband was a television journalist, and so he had a very demanding career. And
Hmm.
I kind of started consulting on the side and doing workshops for organizations. And that really is the genesis for what Wealthy You is today.
And so we haven't mentioned it yet. So tell me about Wealthy You.
So, Wealthy You is a financial wellness company, and we create financial education and investment education programs on multimedia platforms. So, we have two sides to Wealthy You. One where we actually go into organizations and companies and provide financial wellness to their employees because oftentimes what is happening is people are not fully taking advantage of their retirement accounts or making
Mhm.
the types of contributions that are going to have them be more prepared at retirement. And so we kind of do a basics overview of investing. We call it nickel and dime your way to wealth, and other topics because we
Yeah.
customize them. And then we have a whole community. We have group coaching programs. We focus primarily on women. And because women have some unique challenges, as you can imagine, and women of color in particular. So many of the people in our Wealthy You coaching programs are what I call first generation investors, like I was.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and so what is the state of like women and investing? Are we in the market as a gender, especially women
Well,
of color?
yeah, well, it's interesting. What we've seen in just the past decade is more and more women are investing.
Mm.
However, for women of color and Black women in particular, only 35% of households headed by African American women have individual stock investments. So I'm not talking about retirement
Your
plans.
401k, yeah, fund. Okay.
That's correct. And in addition to that, if you look at the amount of so much of what we focus in on Wealthy You is financial well-being and financial independence, and that point at which you no longer have to work because you would have created enough assets for those investments to create an income from you and I don't for you. And so I
Yeah.
don't even like to say retirement because I think that we've when Social Security was invented, we died at 65, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
I mean, they really didn't anticipate that we would live 30 years beyond that. And so what we really try to do at Wealthy You is create a sense of urgency around making sure you're prepared. And the
Mhm.
fact is, if you look at households, Black and Latina households have an average of $30,000 in retirement savings versus 80,000 for their white counterparts. And so what's really really important is to close that gap. But the other
Yeah.
thing we realized too, Jennifer, and why I created Wealthy You, that so much of that gap is a knowledge gap. And
Yes.
because people are like, have particularly if you look at the tendency of African American investors, typically they have more in what are called guaranteed types of investments, right? That stable value fund. There is also a tendency to invest in insurance products that have a guaranteed rate. And what we know in the past decade is that interest rates have been really, really low. And so as a result, their funds are not compounding at the average annual return on the S&P for the past 20 years now is about now based on this most recent performance in the last couple of years is about 15%. So you can just imagine why that gap is so wide.
Right. Right. I have a savings account from a while ago, and I swear it was on Ally. I'll shout out to Ally, but it started at 1% interest. It was just a place to put a chunk of funds that I had, and I wanted to be able to draw out. And I think it's now down to like 0.03% interest. Like every time they send me a note, it's yeah, the interest rate's going down. Like
I know. So it's sort of like the taxes due are more than the interest
Yes.
you even earned. Yeah. And so that really is the goal for women of color, women of color to really what we have found is that the more your knowledge grows about investing and the more experience you have, the more your confidence grows. And so then your risk tolerance increases. And that really is the goal through Wealthy You is to basically we teach you how to understand the financial markets, how to analyze and research your investments through your retirement plan, as well as individual stocks, because we really believe that people that you should be an active investor and not a passive investor. But I'm not
Yeah.
saying active in terms of you trading frequently or anything like
Yeah,
that.
like, I'm saying I'm becoming a day trader. That's the only way.
No. What I'm saying, active and engaged in how your funds are being managed. It's so important.
Well, I think a lot of us are in the market to start through our 401ks or 403bs. And so if we start there, like what should we be looking at to make sure that that money is making the money it should be making?
Oh, I love that question because it's often after a year in Wealthy You that people are like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know. And
Right.
so, really, what you as an individual, investing through your 401k, you should be looking at what the averages are of those investments and typically what the index is uh, returning, and your investment should be aligned with that. So for example, if you're in a large S&P 500 index fund with large companies, then your return should be average of whatever that index is. And even if it's not an index fund, if it's a large growth fund, because the whole premise of an active growth fund is that they would outperform the index, right? And so
Right.
you want to really look at the benchmark for the type of investments that you have, whether it's mutual funds that are invested in large company stocks, mutual funds that are invested in medium sized companies, and all of them have corresponding indexes that show you what the average should be. And that's
Hmm.
what your investment should be returning. And so, what I find oftentimes is that, people kind of either opted into what are target
Yep.
date funds or life cycle funds, where you just pick the date you're going to retire. And this kind of robo algorithm picks it for you. And when you begin to look underneath the hood, if you will, at how your underlying investments, because all they are fund of funds. And so they'll have a large cap, a medium cap, an international fund. Sometimes you look in those funds, and many of those funds aren't performing very well.
Yeah. And you kind of set it and forget it when you were like 40 and now you're 50 and you're like, hey, wait, what's been happening?
That's exactly right. That's exact. But you know what? Here's one of the other things that I find fascinating, Jennifer, and that is risk aversion has it is intriguing in that sometimes we don't look, as long as we open our statements and we haven't lost money, we're happy. But we're
Yes.
so focused on not losing that we're not really focused on really growing our investments.
Yes. And even to go back a step, because you said something to me when we first spoke that I just think is such a strong statement is that you can't save your way to wealth.
Yes, it's impossible, right? And if you think about it, it's sort of counterintuitive. I mean, so many people feel like I'm a good saver,
Right.
I'm frugal, I'm not a spendthrift. And yet you're looking around and you're wondering, it's like, how come I'm not further ahead?
Yeah.
Well, the truth is that for the past decades, monetary policy has been to keep interest rates low to stimulate the economy. And every time we go into any type of economic downturn, that is kind of the lever of choice. And so as
Right.
a result, we've seen interest rates lower than they've ever been. I keep saying, can they go any lower? And now I'm thinking we could be in a negative interest rate environment if we're not comfortable. And that's great if you're financing a home or
Right.
on the financing side. But for people who are savers, basically, they've earned less than 1%, 1 to 2% on fixed income investments in the past few years. If you look at a decade, certainly it's
Hmm.
been below 5%. And so it just takes your money just using the rule of 72, right? The rule of 72 says divide your interest rate into the number of 72 and it'll tell you how long it'll take your money to double. Well, you look at the average annual return on like the S&P 500
My
at 15%,
0.03% savings account, it's going to take a little while.
it's going to take a lifetime,
Yeah.
right? Literally, at 1%, it would take you 72 years for your money to double.
Right.
And so that is the point that we make in Wealthy You, and that is we call them your opportunity levers, right? Like all of us have them, and sometimes they're different. I mean, you could be working for an employer, and they have a breadth, a plethora of investments to choose from.
Right.
Sometimes you could be working for some of these government agencies and you may not. So you might not have as many choices.
Hmm.
Some people have employee stock option programs. Some are able to take advantage of health savings account, HSAs, which allow you
Yep.
to defer your money. And so it's really helping people understand what their unique opportunity is and then really pull it and accelerate your growth so that you can close whatever gap you have toward financial independence.
And I think that one of the thoughts, between us women, it seems, we're always serving others. It's our lot in life and we love it. It's kind of what we're born to do. I'm sure men care a lot about their families too, but just between us women, thinking about the stuff of like, oh, it's me, can be off-putting in our own head. It's an internal conversation that's like, well, but what about the kids? And what about the thing? And I think I'm interested in framing it in you're setting up like generational wealth. If you could think about looking out for yourself as a way to serve those around you, isn't that what we all are born to do?
And it's exactly why I wrote the book, A Purse of Your Own, an easy guide to financial security, to really challenge the societal norms that
Yeah.
really validate women putting themselves in financial jeopardy. Now, that may sound harsh, but I'm dead serious.
Right?
My
Then it's like,
own
well, but the tuition bill is due and that must happen first. Or my mom needs help and that must happen first. And it's like, ugh.
best thing you can do is not be a burden on your children
Yes.
when you are no longer working. And so, in order to do that, what's important is that you give from a full cup that's overflowing and not empty. And what that really
Ah,
requires, particularly in the society that women we find ourselves in, it really requires you having the unique ability to say no nicely. And that is, I really appreciate your thinking I can do this for you. However, I'm already committed.
that is the nicest no I think I've ever heard.
Exactly. And the reason, but here's the secret, that in order for you to be able to align with that value, you have had to have already made some commitments to yourself. And so
Right.
that means that you've really looked at where you want to be. What is it going to take for you to achieve financial independence and not be a burden on your children? And then what it will allow you to do is stop being, we are, as women, can be enablers. And it's this, I often ask women that I'm coaching, I've had women paying, giving half of their pension check, $3,500 to their daughter who's 35 because she hasn't quite found herself. And I'm like, you are not helping her.
Yep.
You are enabling her. And I had another woman say this to me, and I thought it was just so appropriate. And it's that it's arrested development. When you
Yes.
rob your children or any family member or friend from coming to terms with whatever situation they're in, particularly in financial situations, you are not helping them. They are going to find themselves in that situation again. And so the best thing that you can do is really help them to identify, help them to figure out and create a strategy for getting out of it without it involving you having to do something, monetarily. Sometimes it's even emotionally, it's important for us to guard our mental health as well. Because if you look at the statistics on women and our health, so much of the stress that we acquire has nothing to do with choices that we've made on our own.
Right.
They're the
Oh,
people
yes.
around us.
Right. For sure. I just had this conversation with my beloved stepmom, who is newly widowed and is helping my niece and nephew, and much beloved, much beloved. And I said, but now I'm going to give you this out. You're going to say now that all these things have to run through me and I'm going to be the bad guy. Like,
That's exactly what I am as a wealth coach. I tell
right?
them, yeah, and I've had even um, some of our members say, "Oh my gosh, they just can't stand you because my purse is shut now and they hold you responsible." And I'm like, "Oh, I wear that with a badge of
Yeah, I wear that with
honor."
pride. I said, and I had just come up with this when we were, because she helped and it was necessary and it's right. But I keep saying, she's a relatively young woman in my mind. Like she has a long, happy life that I want her to have everything that she needs and the like. And if you keep cutting checks for people, it's not going to be there for you. And I said,
And
and
I
my
don't.
guest room is a bunk bed in my son's room, so that'll be where you end up.
And that's exactly right. And that's not a good retirement plan,
No,
right? For her or for you. And what I would also say, Jennifer, is the real when you come to terms with that, actually you are helping people when you provide them with the tools that they need. My own
yeah,
children, they said to me, I was pretty tough as a parent because I had very liberal parents. And whenever I didn't want to do something, oh, that's okay. You can do this, right? And so as I
oh,
got older, I really, I was like, wow, this isn't working out too well because I'm not finishing anything. And so I began to
interesting.
think about how I would be with my own children. And so, funny story, my kids wanted to join swim team. And I said, oh, okay, that's great. But if I'm going to get up every morning, guess what? You can't quit. And they were like, oh, sure, I'm not going to quit. And so, literally, when my daughter, Olivia, graduated from swim team, the announcer said, and Olivia Owens, 14 years on swim team. And those parents all looked at me like, are you crazy? You were here. I was here every day. I was writing ribbons, but I wanted them to understand that there is real value in
Seeing it
sticking
through.
with it,
Yeah.
seeing it through. Absolutely.
Well, that's funny because I did the same thing with my daughter in middle school band. That was 3 tough years, but, she wrote a college essay on perseverance, and now she started college. So she got to that was her ribbon, I think, was the perseverance essay. So, uh, so when in talking about generational wealth, and like, ooh, sure, I want to set it up that I'm good for my kids not to have to worry about me, and that also that I can make enough wealth that I can pay for their college, the near term and the future term. But looking at the other direction, like with our parents, should we be investigating where their monies are? I think the answer is yes, but I like, or do you get to a point where they're set it and forget it? With their investments.
No, I think that, in terms of legacy wealth, what you'll see is that elder abuse, financial abuse is awful, right? And so,
Oh,
again, you cannot delegate that responsibility to anyone. And so, what will happen, what is very, very important is that you have an annual money meeting, I believe, with your parents. I mean, I
yeah.
ended up as guardian and conservator of both of my parents' finances. And as I look back at it, it was a good thing that I did because what I what I had assumed that my other siblings, because I'm the youngest, might be better in that role. What
Yeah.
I realize now is I was exactly the right person to do so. Right.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And and then by the way, somehow my father had payday loans and he had plenty of money in the bank. Right. So why did he do that? People taking advantage of him. Okay.
Yeah.
They went into some store and bought some bedroom set, and they wanted a new bedroom set, and they looked up and they had money in the bank. This bedroom set was not near what they paid for it, and the interest rate on it was egregious. And
Retail interest rates, right.
so
Oh,
I had
yeah,
to unravel all of that. And so that's why it's even more critical
to
as
have
your
those
parents
things. Yep.
age that you get engaged.
I love it. I mean, thank you. You're empowering me to have this conversation that you can tell I'm dragging my feet on. So
Yes,
that
yes.
will be my next to do item. So thank you.
My pleasure. I come with
Oh,
gifts.
well, thank you so much for joining us on The Breadwinners. I encourage you to email us anytime at thebreadwinnerspod@gmail.com or visit us at thebreadwinnerspodcast.com. Please remember to subscribe and to rate and review us. It really helps us grow. And until next week, keep hustling.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.